My name is Rachel, I'm 32, and I've always stood a little outside the circle. A small part of me still thought maybe this time they'd see me differently, but nothing changed. At the housewarming, they toasted Olivia as if I didn't exist. They didn't notice the envelope I brought quietly in my coat. The dining room was glowing with soft golden light from the chandelier bouncing off the polished silverware and perfectly folded napkins. I stood just behind the archway watching the family bustle about. No one had noticed me arrive. Olivia's laugh rang out high-rehearsed, the kind she used when she wanted all eyes on her. I didn't step forward. Not yet. There was a stack of monogrammed gift boxes on the sideboard, a new housewarming tradition Mom had said in the family group chat. I hadn't been invited to participate in the planning, just sent the address and time. Olivia's new home. Her well-deserved place, as Dad had put it. Make yourself useful, Mom said briskly, finally acknowledging me with a sideways glance. She handed me a tray of hors d'oeuvres and disappeared back into the kitchen. I took the tray without a word. A faint scratch on the wood floor caught my attention as I moved through the room. It was from when we were kids. Olivia had shoved me during a game, and I'd crashed into the buffet. No one believed me. "Don't blame your clumsiness on your sister," Dad had scolded, not even looking up from his paper. I hadn't thought of that moment in years. Funny how memories slide back in uninvited. The guests began to arrive, Mom's church friends, Dad's colleagues, Olivia's fiancé's family. I offered canapés and collected napkins, invisible in a room full of people who shared my blood. Dad gave a short toast halfway through. He clinked his glass, cleared his throat, and gestured toward Olivia, radiant in her designer dress. "She's earned this. She's worked hard, and we couldn't be prouder to hand over the keys today," he said, smiling at her like she'd hung the stars herself. He didn't even glance in my direction. I stood near the sideboard, gripping the tray just a little too tight. My fingers ached, but I didn't let go. "Rachel, don't just stand there," Olivia called across the room with a smirk. "Dad said he needs the documents from the car." I paused, letting the silence stretch just a beat longer than expected, then nodded. "Sure." It was always like this, subtle, quiet, but persistent. Out on the porch, the night air was crisp. I took a long breath, letting it cool the heat rising behind my ears. Then I stepped off the porch, heading for my car, not hers, the one I parked around the corner away from the family lineup in the driveway. Inside the glove box sat a single manila envelope. My name was printed neatly in the top left corner beneath the law firm's letterhead. I didn't open it. I didn't need to. I'd already read every word weeks ago. Back inside, the energy had shifted. Someone had opened wine. Olivia was holding court in the center of the room, showing off photos of the remodel. Mom hovered beside her, glowing with pride. I walked back in quietly, envelope in hand, and laid it on the sideboard behind the flower arrangement. No one noticed. Not yet. Dinner was being served. Everyone gathered around the long mahogany table, clinking glasses, trading jokes, stories. I took my seat at the far end, just close enough to be seen, just far enough to be excluded from any real conversation. Olivia had the seat next to Dad. Of course she did. "I'm thinking of converting the guest room into a walk-in closet," she said, twirling her fork. "The natural light in there is just perfect for filming." "Oh, that's smart," Mom chimed in. "You'll be doing more of those home videos now that you have this place." Dad nodded. "Good investment. You've got an eye for opportunity, Liv." I looked down at my plate. Uncle Greg leaned toward me from across the table. "Still doing accounting, Rachel?" I gave a small smile. "Yeah, still at the firm." He nodded, but his attention drifted away before I could finish the sentence. "Daniel, my cousin, was telling a story about his trip to Europe." The table lit up with laughter when he described losing his passport in Prague. I reached for the water pitcher. My sleeve brushed against the floral centerpiece, causing a tiny cascade of petals to fall onto the tablecloth. "Careful," Rachel Olivia said sharply. "That arrangement cost a fortune." Mom gave me a tired look. "Could you just not touch anything tonight?" I placed the pitcher down quietly. From the corner of my eye, I saw Dad's hand rest briefly on Olivia's shoulder, steady and approving. The envelope I had left on the sideboard remained untouched, partially hidden by the peonies. I wondered if anyone had even noticed it. Dessert arrived small plates of lemon tart and berry compote. The chatter softened into slow bites and idle comments. Then came the moment they'd all been waiting for. Well, Dad said, dabbing his mouth with a cloth napkin. "I think it's time." He rose and walked to the center of the room near the fireplace where a few decorative gift boxes still sat unopened. This house, this beautiful home, it represents more than bricks and paint. It's legacy. And Olivia? He turned toward her, smiling. "You've earned it." A murmur of approval spread across the room. Elaine and I talked it over. It just makes sense. You're the one with the vision. You're building something. I held my breath. And Rachel. He looked my way, pausing as if just now remembering I was there. "Well, she's got her own path, and we respect that." I gave a single nod, not a smile, just acknowledgement. Someone clapped, then others followed. Olivia stood and made a mock curtsy. "Thank you, everyone. I really am lucky. And I promise to make this house into something worthy of our family's name." She beamed. Dad looked proud. Mom blinked away what might have been tears. And still no one saw the envelope. I glanced at the sideboard. The light caught its edge now just enough for the gold lettering to glint faintly. Someone would see it soon. But not yet. After dinner, people migrated to the sitting room. Olivia held court seated like a hostess in her own kingdom. She poured wine, handed out coasters, and laughed easily. The house already felt like hers. I slipped away unnoticed. In the hallway, I paused by the family photo wall. Decades of birthdays, holidays, and posed smiles. In most of them, Olivia stood in the center radiant. I was always a step to the side, a hand on someone's shoulder or partly cropped. My eyes lingered on one picture, Grandma's last Thanksgiving. She had placed me beside her at the table's head. I remember her whispering, "You've got my backbone, Rachel. That's rarer than charm." A sound pulled me back, the rustle of paper. Mom was straightening the sideboard, adjusting the vases. She saw the envelope. "What's this?" she asked aloud, more curious than concerned. I turned toward her slowly. "Oh," I said, keeping my voice even. "It's addressed to Dad." Her brows furrowed as she held it up, recognizing the gold stamp. "Grandma's lawyer." Dad entered behind her, wine glass in hand. He paused when he saw it. Elaine handed it over. It was tucked behind the flowers. He opened it, reading in silence. The chatter in the living room faded in the background like sound falling into water. Mark's jaw tightened. His lips parted, then pressed together again. Slowly he looked up, not at Olivia. At me. "You knew?" he asked. I said nothing. He handed the letter to Elaine. She gasped audibly. Uncle Greg stepped forward to take a look. Then Daniel. The room quieted as the paper passed from hand to hand like a verdict. "She left it to Rachel," someone finally whispered. "The house. The deed's already in her name." Silence. Olivia entered last. "What's going on?" No one answered. She saw the letter in Mom's hand. "Is this a joke?" Her voice cracked just enough for the polished facade to slip. I didn't move. I didn't speak. I simply turned and walked down the hallway past the wall of pictures toward the front door. My hand brushed the doorknob. Behind me, someone, maybe Mom, called my name. I didn't stop. Outside, the night was quiet. The porch light buzzed faintly. I stepped onto the path and let the door close behind me. No slam, just a soft click. Inside, they would be talking, sorting, arguing, but I wouldn't hear any of it. And for once, they'd be the ones left wondering what I would do next. The morning after the dinner, the air in the house felt different. The sun filtered through the sheer curtains of the guest room, soft and quiet, but I could already sense the undercurrents of tension humming just beneath the surface. Downstairs, I heard Olivia's laughter, louder than usual and brittle. I stayed upstairs a little longer than I needed to. I took my time folding my pajamas, smoothing the bed sheets, checking my phone, though there were no new messages. Then I finally walked downstairs, expecting no greetings. I wasn't wrong. In the kitchen, Mark sipped his coffee in silence. Elaine stirred something at the stove, her back turned. Olivia sat on the counter, bare feet, swinging like a teenager, smiling into her cup like nothing had shifted. "Morning," I said. Mark grunted. Elaine didn't turn. Olivia looked up. "Sleep well, Rachel." I nodded. "Fine, thanks." Her smile held, but her eyes flicked to Dad. Elaine finally spoke, setting a plate of eggs on the table. "We're heading to the lawyer's office later. Some final paperwork about Grandma's estate." I sat down. I thought that was already settled. A beat of silence. Then Mark said, "There's still some confusion. We want to be sure everything is correct." "Of course," I said, and took a sip of the coffee Daniel had left brewing. They didn't ask me to come. Later that afternoon, I watched from the upstairs window as the three of them, Mark, Elaine, and Olivia, got into Dad's car and pulled out of the driveway. No one looked back at the house. I sat on the edge of my childhood bed. The room hadn't changed. Posters from college still clung to the walls. A dusty bookshelf. A soft chair in the corner where Grandma used to read to me when she visited. It was strange how easily they excluded me even when the house was mine. I spent the day quietly, walked the garden, reorganized the spice cabinet just to keep my hands moving. The silence was companionable, not lonely. Evening came before they returned. When the front door opened, the energy shifted again, subtle but sharp. Elaine walked in first, followed by Olivia, who looked flushed and irate. "She really did it," Olivia muttered as she tossed her coat over the banister. Mark came in last, not meeting my eyes. "We talked to Mr. Harris. He confirmed everything." I simply nodded. "I don't understand why she would do this," Olivia said, her voice pitched slightly higher. "I mean, the house? To Rachel. I'm still her granddaughter," I said. My tone was calm even. Olivia gave a dry laugh. "Barely. You hardly visited. You didn't even call at Christmas. She was the one who kept calling me," I replied. That shut her up. For a moment, Elaine broke in, voice taut. "We thought everything would be split fairly. We were all under that impression." "Then you didn't really know her," I said gently. They all stared at me. I stood smoothing my shirt. "Look, I didn't come here to fight," I said. "I came for dinner. I stayed out of the way." "Then go back to staying out of the way?" Olivia snapped. Mark didn't say a word. It wasn't the words that stung, it was how easily she said them. Like I didn't matter, like Grandma's decision didn't matter. Like nothing had changed at all. But it had. I looked around the room, my gaze passing over familiar furniture, the portrait of Grandma above the mantel, the worn rug she refused to replace. "Okay," I said. And I went upstairs without another word. In the hallway, I passed Daniel, who had stayed behind earlier. He raised an eyebrow. "Everything all right?" I paused. "They're still adjusting." He gave a low whistle. "It's going to take more than a will to change how they see you." I nodded once. But the deed's done. That night, I stayed up late in the guest room reading through Grandma's old letters. She always wrote in blue ink, her cursive slanting, right full of loops and precision. Most of them were thank you notes or holiday wishes, but one was addressed to me, dated just 3 months before she passed. "I know how they treat you," it said. "I see everything, even when they think I don't. The house should go to someone who knows what it's like to be ignored." I closed the letter and folded it carefully. Downstairs, I heard Olivia's voice rising, complaining to Elaine in clipped whispers that weren't quiet enough. "She's acting like it doesn't even matter to her," Olivia hissed. "Like it's just another weekend." "It was never hers to begin with," Elaine said. "Your father was the one who kept it running when Grandma fell ill." I leaned against the door quietly, listening. Not because I wanted to, but because I needed to understand where they were drawing their lines. By morning, the house was tense again. Olivia took the master bathroom and locked the door without knocking. When I came downstairs, the breakfast table was already cleared, though I knew they had just eaten. I poured myself coffee. No one offered me toast. "You're still here?" Olivia asked as she walked by. "Where else would I be?" I said. She didn't respond. Later, Uncle Greg arrived. He greeted everyone in the living room and gave me a long, thoughtful look before stepping closer. "Rachel," he said warmly, pulling me into a side hug. "Glad you're here." I smiled, and for the first time that day, it felt real. Uncle Greg took a seat near the fireplace. He glanced around at the others, then said, You know Harris said Grandma was clear about her intentions. No confusion there. Olivia scoffed. She must have been confused. She barely spoke the last few months. She was sharp as ever, Greg replied. And she told me too. She wanted Rachel to have the house, said it made sense. Mark looked uncomfortable. Elaine bit her tongue. I stayed quiet. Anyway, Greg said, settling back, it's not like she left anyone out of the will, just made different choices than some expected. Olivia stood abruptly and left the room. Later that afternoon, I found her in the backyard pacing along the old stepping stones Grandma had laid years ago. I just don't get it, she said when she noticed me. She never said anything to me, not once. She didn't need to, I said. She saw things. What things? Olivia snapped. I didn't answer, just watched her eyes, which were starting to fill with a mixture of frustration and something softer, confusion maybe, or realization. You think you're better than us, she whispered, because she picked you. No, I said quietly. But maybe I was the only one who didn't need to be chosen to care. She turned away. Dinner that night was quieter than usual. Elaine placed a single extra plate on the table but didn't ask me to sit. I sat anyway. Daniel tried to make small talk, bless him, but every topic landed like a pebble dropped into a still pond, barely a ripple, just wait. You remember when Grandma used to make that weird cranberry thing every Thanksgiving, he asked. Mark nodded. Hated it. She knew, I said softly. She still made it. No one replied. That night, I walked through the hallway, stopping by Grandma's room. Her old reading chair was still there, though the books were gone. I sat for a moment, hearing the muffled voices from downstairs, the rustle of cutlery being put away. Then I noticed something under the cushion. A small envelope. Inside was a key. No note. Just a plain silver key on a faded ribbon. I turned it in my fingers, then smiled to myself. They still thought I hadn't reacted. They didn't know the story wasn't over. Sunday morning, the sun filtered through the kitchen windows, highlighting every quiet crack in the family's facade. I sat on the back porch with a cup of coffee, the same mug Grandma used when she watched the birds. Daniel stepped outside, hands in his pockets. She really left it to you, huh? He asked. I nodded. She always said you listened more than you talked, he continued. Guess that counts for something. Before I could reply, Elaine called out from inside. Everyone, living room, now. We gathered around the old fireplace, the one Olivia used to decorate for Christmas. Mr. Harris had arrived, briefcase in hand, expression unreadable. Sorry for the short notice, he began, but your grandmother's will was clear about the timing. She wanted the deed transferred today. Olivia blinked. Today? You're kidding. No, Harris said gently. She was very intentional. She wanted things settled before Rachel left. Mark shifted in his seat. Elaine crossed her arms. Then Harris opened the folder. This is the original deed, signed and notarized 2 weeks before her stroke. She gifted the house officially to Rachel. This isn't just inheritance, it's already hers. The room was still. No one said a word. I felt Olivia's eyes on me, wide, wounded, but mostly stunned. She gave it to her. Mark asked slowly, as if testing the words. She did, Harris confirmed, and she was of sound mind. Elaine stood. But she told me she'd reconsidered. She didn't, Harris said. She asked me to make sure Rachel knew she was seen even when others failed to look. Silence. Then Olivia whispered, she never even said goodbye to me. She did, I said softly. You just didn't notice. Harris placed the key from the envelope onto the coffee table. The silver caught the morning light. You'll need this, he said to me. I picked it up quietly, wrapping the ribbon around my hand. I'll be moving in at the end of the month, I said, calm but steady. You're actually going to live here? Elaine asked, her voice tight. I am. It was her wish. And I think I need to make peace with this place. No one argued. Mark looked down. Daniel nodded once. Olivia left the room. As I walked past her later that day, suitcase in hand, she stood in the hallway, arms crossed. She picked you. Not because you were better, but because you were different. I met her eyes. I never asked to be picked. Her mouth opened, then closed. I stepped outside. The air felt lighter. As I reached my car, I looked back at the house not with triumph but with something quieter. Closure. Moving into Grandma's house wasn't dramatic. It wasn't some triumphant return or loud announcement. It was quiet, almost too quiet. The movers finished early. By noon, I was sitting alone on the porch, the same place Grandma used to sit every morning with her tea and crossword. Inside the house still smelled faintly of her perfume, jasmine and something else I could never place. I didn't change much. Her furniture stayed. Her framed embroidery remained on the walls. All I did was dust open the windows and let the air move. A few days later, Uncle Greg called. "Rachel," he said, "I know things have been tense, but your grandma always told me, the one who listens is the one who understands." "You did that." He paused. "And I just want you to know I'm glad the house stayed with someone who respected it." That night, I sat by the window holding the envelope Grandma had left me privately, one no one else knew about. Inside, a handwritten letter, short but warm. "I see you, Rachel. I always did. This house is yours because you never asked for it." I smiled and tucked the note back in. The next day was the estate reception, something Grandma had requested in her will. No funeral, she said, just a garden reception. People remember better with sunlight, so we hosted it in the backyard. White chairs, a long table of tea and finger food, bougainvillea hanging over the trellis, her photo framed at the center. They came in waves, distant cousins, neighbors, old friends from her book club. Olivia arrived late, wearing dark blue. She didn't greet me. Elaine and Mark stood off to the side, talking to a couple from church. Mr. Harris stood near the photo. When people greeted him, he simply smiled and nodded. I stayed close to the refreshment table, pouring tea and offering plates like a quiet hostess. People thanked me. Some said she always talked about you, or she loved how gentle you were. Olivia didn't speak a word, but she watched. It was when Mr. Harris tapped a spoon to his glass that the murmurs died down. Everyone turned. "I don't want to speak long," he said, voice even. "But I do want to honor one thing Alice, your grandmother, asked of me." He pulled out a slim envelope. She wrote a final note to be read at this gathering, her words, not mine. He unfolded the paper. "If you're hearing this, then I've gone. But I hope you're gathered not to mourn, but to reflect. I didn't always speak loudly, but I watched. I noticed who left early, who stayed late, who asked for nothing and still gave everything." A pause. To Rachel, who never fought to be seen, but always showed up. "You reminded me of the best parts of me." Silence blanketed the garden. I looked down at my tea. When I glanced up, Olivia's gaze was locked on me. No anger, just a flicker of something unreadable. Then Mr. Harris said one more thing. "She asked me to give this to Rachel now." He handed me a small velvet box. I opened it slowly. Grandma's ring. The one she wore every Sunday. Simple gold, a single emerald. I didn't cry. I just nodded. The silence held. After the reading, conversations resumed, but softer. The clinking of teacups, the shuffle of heels on grass, but the laughter had thinned. Something had shifted, like the air had dropped a degree. People approached me not in droves, but enough to feel the difference. A neighbor touched my arm gently and said, "She used to say you were the heart of this house." An old friend of Grandma's leaned in and whispered, "You were always here, not just in body and presence." Elaine didn't speak. She sat beneath the pergola, her hand tightly gripping the handle of her bag, staring straight ahead. Mark tried to approach me once, then stopped halfway and turned back. Olivia stayed near the rose bushes, quiet, twisting her bracelet. Mr. Harris gave me a slight bow before he left, saying, "Only your grandmother knew." As the guests thinned out, Olivia approached. She didn't say anything at first, just stood there beside me watching the sun dip. Then softly, almost inaudibly, "You knew about the deed." I looked at her, not sharply, not with triumph, just evenly. "Yes," I said. "Before she passed. She told me a month before she went." Olivia's brows twitched. "And you didn't say anything. There was nothing to say." She opened her mouth like she had more, but no words came. Eventually, she just nodded once, then walked away. I didn't follow. Instead, I began gathering the cups. The sun was lower now, and the shadows stretched long across the grass. Inside, I placed the ring box in the top drawer of Grandma's desk, right where she used to keep her letters. That night, alone again in the quiet house, I sat at the kitchen table with a cup of chamomile. It was the same table where Grandma once peeled apples while I did homework, where she folded napkins into birds and placed them by my plate, where she once said, "You don't need to fight to matter, just stand steady." I heard her voice like it was still in the room. The next morning, Olivia came by. She didn't knock, just stood at the front steps. I opened the door surprised. "I'm not here to argue," she said. "I just wanted to bring you this." It was a box of old photographs, some of me and Grandma, some of us all together as kids. She kept these in her drawer, Olivia added. I figured, they belong here now. I took the box with both hands. "Thanks," I said simply. She lingered, eyes darting around the living room, then met mine one last time. "She really did see you, didn't she?" "She did." A moment passed. Then she said, "I'll go. No need to rush," I replied, offering a calm smile. But she turned and left, and that was okay. Some silences didn't need to be filled. Some spaces needed to stay still. That afternoon, I opened every window in the house. The breeze moved through the curtains like breath, like presence, not haunting, just steady, like the house itself was remembering. I spent the next hours walking room by room, touching the worn edges of picture frames, running my fingers across the faded floral wallpaper in the hallway, pausing at the notch in the kitchen door frame where Grandma had once marked our heights with a pencil. Some memories held weight. Some just floated like dust in late sunlight. As I stood at the base of the stairs, I saw the small carved wooden box at the foot of Grandma's bookshelf, the one she never let us open as kids. I sat down on the floor and gently lifted the lid. Inside, a folded letter tied with a pale blue ribbon. The paper had yellowed, and the handwriting was her unmistakable cursive. "If you're reading this, I'm gone, and that's okay. Don't let them tell you what you earned. You've lived it. This house is not a reward, it's a return. Welcome home." I folded the letter back with care. There was no need to cry, not from sadness, not from relief. I simply sat there with the weight of love, not loud, not dramatic, just there, as solid and real as the beams of the old house. That evening, as twilight pooled across the front yard, I stepped out onto the porch with a blanket wrapped around my shoulders. Across the street, porch lights flickered on one by one, and then I saw Elaine. She stood by the mailbox, arms crossed, gaze distant. After a moment, her eyes met mine. There was no smile, no wave, just a long, still look. Then she turned and walked back toward her car. And I just watched, unmoving blanket clutched loosely at my sides. I didn't need anything from her. No apology, no reconciliation. That wasn't the point. The next day, the lawyer called again, papers to sign, transitions to begin. But I wasn't in a hurry. Instead, I made tea, took it to the backyard, sat on the old bench where Grandma once tended her roses. The blooms were still there, wild and soft, tilting toward the light. I leaned back, eyes closed. There was nothing left to prove, no one left to impress, just this house and me and the truth that finally had space to breathe. And as the wind shifted again, carrying the scent of lavender and memory, I whispered, not to anyone in particular, "I'm still here." Some stories don't end with applause. They end in quiet, the kind that follows truth finally being seen, not because someone shouted it, but because someone stayed. And sometimes staying is the loudest thing you can do.